Aihik, would you like to set the agenda, set the tone of this session?
Sure. If you have been following the space sector the last couple of years, what's been happening is that the Indian government has taken several policy interventions to open up the space sector for private entities. We had the Indian space policy in 2023, then the FDI norms in space sector was subsequently eased up. And as a result, we have a host of space tech startups from offering solutions in launch services. Then we have Digantara, Piersight, Pixxel, who all work on satellite applications. And recently, during the budget, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a VC fund of rupees 1,000 crore for the space sector. I want to open up with Anirudh. Rupees 1,000 crore sounds like a lot, obviously, but considering that there will be lots of space tech startups, assuming that would be coming in the next few years, and also that deep tech generally has been a very capital intensive ecosystem in general. Do you think that rupees 1,000 crore is enough?
First of all, thank you for having me here. I am Anirudh Sharma, one of the co-founders and CEO of Digantara. At Digantara, we work on a specialized field in the space sector called space domain awareness or space situational awareness. We work on tracking satellites and understanding everything that happens in space. It's more of building an infrastructure layer. Now, to answer your question, 1,000 crore seems quite a lot for somebody who's not from this sector. Definitely 1,000 crore seems a really big number. But for somebody doing deep tech, be it space tech or any other industry within the deep tech sector, it's not enough, but I would say it's still a very significant step that the government has taken to show commitment towards sunrise sectors like space tech. So I would say it was one of the good decisions that they've made where they've announced something which we didn't have before. So that first step was very essential for the growth of this sector. And I think this will definitely attract more investments. But just to add on to a couple more points, when we see the other sectors or let's say the other markets like the US, China, this is not at all comparable. It's I would say very modest. So to begin with, I would say it's a good positive step.
So what would be a better number for you?
Even 10,000 crore is not enough for the sector because that's how.
Can I do some wordplay and say sky is the limit?
Yeah.
Is it?
Sky is even not the limit for the sector. We need so much funds. It's very much capital intensive, I would say.
Okay.
Awais, coming to you, would you like to weigh in on that, and what is your take on this?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me as well. Hey folks, I'm Awais, founder and CEO at Pixxel Space Technologies. We also build satellites, but different kinds of satellites. We put cameras on these satellite buses, we put them up there, and you can think of us as big glorified photographers of the earth. We don't take images of your backyard, we take images of farms and forests and so on and so forth. In terms of the 1,000 crore VC fund, I think it's a great start, right? I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that since the privatization of space or the liberalization of space was announced, it's been barely 4 years since that was announced, one. And second, the amount of startups that have also started, probably most of them really kick-started their operations in 2017, 2018, 2019 in the case of Pixxel, and so on. And so you can think of the 1,000 crore fund as probably the seed fund for this sector. It's like even if you see $5 million for an early stage startup, for which I believe most of us didn't have the opportunity to go out 3 years or 4 years or 5 years ago when we started, that's great. You can fund 20 companies with 5 million, which will at least make sure that these startups don't die in the valley of death before they're even able to prove the prototype with some things. Of course, not possible if you're building rockets because they require 20 million to even build and launch one at least on if you're being optimistic. But it needs to be followed up with, I would say, growth stage equity. If you look at Finland, for example, right, a country that you would sort of never think would operate in space, they've invested probably more than $200 million in their satellite company called ISRO, right? And this is Finland there. US obviously is at a different playing level of the amount of capital that flows in. Japan funds it quite a bit. China has obviously funded so many startups. So I would say great start, absolutely no complaints there given the stage we are at. But as the sector grows, I would say, yeah, we would probably need a 10,000 crore growth fund at some point, and also as to back the winners and double down on the winners.
You know, if we talk about government support and policy, etc., the economic survey, the recent one, also flagged challenges that the space economy is facing right now. And there are a host of things, actually: competitive marketplace, pricing constraints, limited demand, lack of visibility of long-term demand. So what are space tech startups doing to address these kind of challenges?
I mean, I think we're just figuring it out, right? No one has an answer. If you look at, being very frank about the space sector, if you've seen it globally, at least the first few years are predominantly anchored by the government being a customer. More than half of the entire revenue that flows into the space sector is probably just the US government alone, right? So if you look at SpaceX, if you look at Planet Labs, if you look at sort of anyone else, and Northrop and Lockheed, where is their revenue coming from in the space sector? Is the US government. If you look at Europe, it's the European Space Agency. If you look at Australia, it's the Australian Space Agency, Egypt, JAXA in Japan. So I would say the challenge does exist to take it beyond selling to the government, and how do you get it to other enterprises and eventually to people. There are a lot of use cases that we generally don't think are space related, but they are basically so ubiquitous that we can't live without them. Weather, for example, we know when it's going to be rainy or cloudy or sunny. It's possible only through weather satellites. It's just that it has been government subsidized for a long level and government funded. Or GPS and maps that we use. It's not possible without the GPS satellites that the US launched and sort of open sourced it for free. It cost hundreds of billions of dollars to sort of put it up there. But that's what we are all trying to do here. You know, either we sell to other space companies and build up an ecosystem, or in the case of companies like us selling data, we go to agri companies, oil and gas companies and others. And especially as sustainability and environment and climate becomes a more pressing factor and problem to solve for us, I think that's where having eyes in space that can help look at it from a global standpoint, where this becomes a data set that people can't debate, is it true or not, because you're seeing an actual image of what's happening down there. That's what needs to happen. So the challenges are there, but like in any other business, you just have to figure out ways to make money and make more money than you're spending.
But apart from whatever the government has enlisted in the economic survey, what, as an industry insider, do you think is a key challenge right now that you all need to collectively, as an ecosystem, should address or need to address?
Two things: availability of funding to put stuff up there in space or build something. And number two is revenue once something is put up, to make sure that there's revenues to keep the sustainable business operations going. In both cases, the government will have to play a key initial part, but they can't continue to do that forever. It's, only probably in the first 2, 3, 4 years of operations. The 1,000 crore seed fund is great. You put in some money, make sure the company doesn't die, they build a product. And then the government has to become an anchor customer in the beginning stages when other companies might not be willing to take a risk on something. We are providing a new type of data set, but how do the customers know that it's going to be good? The government comes in there and says, okay, it might not be good, but let us take a risk. And then when other companies see that, oh, this is actually happening here, and then they'll start doing that. That's how the ecosystem builds.
Okay, coming to you, Gaurav, you were an engineer in Indian Space Research Organization for 9 years. Not just you, we have other startups like a Skyroot Aerospace or an Ethereal X, whose co-founders and CEOs are also from ISRO alumni, right? So one way to see is that ISRO obviously has a great pool of talent, right? But the flip side also is that ISRO is losing talent, right? So folks like you who've gone out to make your own venture or other opportunities. So what do you have to say for that?
So first of all, hi everyone. I'm Gaurav, Seth, CEO of Piersight. We build synthetic aperture radars for Earth observation. So these are essentially like cameras with a spotlight, so we can image during the nights through the clouds. Now coming towards your question, if you think about it, ISRO can hire a few hundred people per year. But startups like us who have started this thing now are providing job opportunities, such core job opportunities to few hundreds and thousands of more people, right? So we should look at it from that point of view, that few talent is going out of ISRO to the industry, but it's also having this chain effect where we are hiring more and more people and giving more opportunities for Indians to, right now we have people in our company who've shifted back from abroad and are working in India. So they were always looking for those opportunities, but there were only few opportunities in ISRO so far.
Let me round up the question for you a little better.
Yeah.
If all the young, talented ISRO folks are exiting to make their own venture, what is going to happen to ISRO in the next 10 years or something?
mean, there's no dearth of talent. I mean, in any given point of time, if you see ISRO applies for, one open post, there are few thousands or lakhs of people who apply for it. And, it would be very rare that people go out and venture. So coming back to your previous question, actually, the 1,000 crore fund, think about it as a seed, hundreds of seeds which are planted. Like, first time when someone offered me 1 crore rupees of check, it was enough for me to quit my job and start a startup. So many such seeds can be planted using this fund. And, we can see a lot of good outcome coming out of it.
Even the ISRO chairman had said something on these lines, that we don't have enough internal demand for applications derived from satellite technology. So my question is to all three of you, because your solutions have major applications in defense. Firstly, do you have good demand coming in from this segment? Is that enough? Are you looking at other segments? If you could, one by one, give us a sense of how the demand is shaping up in this space.
So in Digantara's case, it's a bit unique because we specialize on tracking what's happening in space. So we cater specifically to the space sector and defense sector. Anybody who is doing anything in space, they are our customers. So the demand comes mostly from the governments and defense sectors for us, which we've seen happening from the most international government agencies right now. But in India, I would say this topic is very new. We didn't have anything around space situational awareness as such. And again, globally, this came into existence since 2018 when private companies started working towards building the infra for space situational awareness. Before that, it was more of a military and a government thing. So I would say that government has to be the anchor customer for a solution like ours, and that has been the case so far. So we are working with multiple governments today, supplying data sets on what's happening in space, and geopolitically, it's kind of helping us out today because you've seen a lot of wars happening, and most of these wars have some or the other way linked to space, or space assets have a role to play in these wars. And we've seen that happening with Russia and Ukraine, where we've seen a lot of commercial satellites being used to monitor Ukraine as well. So, which means that the demand is there today mostly because of how the geopolitics is playing out. And going forward, I would say that think about this sector as an aviation sector. When we started aviation, we didn't have an infrastructure, so to say, to track aircrafts. Today you have sophisticated infrastructure to know what's happening in airspace. Similarly, as space companies grow and we start launching more and more satellites, just to give you some numbers, in the year 2022, we had around 3,000 satellites. 24, we have 12,000 satellites. So the number of commercial satellite itself that is growing is massive. And this will drive the demand for services like ours. So I would say, this 1,000 crore seed funding also will eventually help us create an economy internally, because there'll be more space companies, more space players launching more and more assets, and they'll be our customers. And that's why I see this growing.
Gaurav, all three of you have major applications in defense, but is the demand enough, or will you collectively, or as an industry, also be focusing on other sub-segments as well?
Yeah, so first of all, my take on it is that demand is not only in the defense sector. There is a very high demand in commercial sector as well. However, the difference is that defense and strategic sectors do forward investment. For a commercial sector, they need the capacity to be up there, while defense will handhold you to put the capacity up there, right? So eventually, once the capacity is going up, we will see the more and more revenue coming out of commercial applications. But yeah, initial hand-holding has to be, or it's better if it is done through these strategic sectors or the national demands.
How about you?
Yeah, I think, look, the need from the private sector is there. The demand also from the private sector is there, but globally, the demand needs to be brought up in India, right? And that is due to a variety of different factors. Let's take, for example, agriculture. We work with quite a few big seed fertilizer companies in Europe and in the US. They are already customers, right? But in India, we don't have any such seed or fertilizer companies that are willing to pay that amount of money due to a variety of reasons. One being not enough education. They haven't really been offered that, look, here's satellite data. Here's what it can help you see. Here's what it can help you save. So what is the return on investment on that? So one, we need to do a little bit of education in the sector for these companies. And second, it's a price sensitive geography. You might be willing to pay for satellite data for a few dollars per acre in the US and in Europe because the GDP per capita and the spending power is much higher. It's not the case in India. So one, we have to bring the price down, which we are trying to do. And second, as things get more affluent in the years and decades to come, that will also increase in the country. So it's not a question of is there a need for it? There is. The demand needs to be brought up and it's coming up gradually. For example, let's take Rio Tinto. We work with Rio Tinto for helping make their mining operations more sustainable. There's not dearth of mining companies in India, but not a single one of them has purchased satellite data, whereas Rio Tinto has been doing that for the past 10, 15 years. The use cases are the same. The return on investment is the same. They'll actually get to see what minerals are present where. So I would say what needs to be done is education, and second, as the affluence and the paying capacity grows in the country, that will also grow. What we do as a company today is we look at it as a global venture. Space by default is global. Once you put satellites up there, you don't see national boundaries. And 95% of the customers and contracts we have signed are actually from the commercial sector in our case, not the government. Right, the 5% comes from the government, it helps, but it's really the commercial sector in our case that's sort of taking. So yeah, there is a demand and a need, but in India specifically, it's a new and nascent ecosystem. So hopefully in the next 5 years, it will change.
Okay, so, Anirudh, you have launched a satellite as of now. Awais, you have launched a couple of satellites. Gaurav, there's a plan to launch a constellation of 30 satellites, right? But again, Awais, you have plans to launch 6 satellites, right? But again, these things take time, and deep tech generally has a longer gestation period, right? So when do you see yourself fully being operational, and when you do, what kind of returns are you expecting in terms of like, how does where are your investors in terms of the waiting period and everything? If you could weigh in on that. I would like if you could keep it a little brief. I think we are running short of time. So yeah, Anirudh.
So what I would say is, definitely there is a return on investment in this sector. Like I said, this is one of the growing sectors, and everything that we do today are some or the other way dependent on satellite activities. So that's one thing that we need to remember. But the other thing about where and when would this revenues come in our case, what we are doing is we have segregated our infra stack with a software stack. We're also building infra, which means capacity to get data. At the same time, we have data analytics platform, which we can right now use and sell our services to government agencies and commercial companies. And that's something that we're using right now to be able to generate some revenue. While the full capacity and full-fledged infra play will only happen when we have all of our satellites beaming down data, and then we supply through our platform. So for meanwhile, what we are doing is we are commercializing the entire value chain that we are developing internally at Digantara. That's one way to see on ROI for short term, I would say.
Okay, Gaurav.
So unlike, OneWeb or Starlink, Earth observation, we don't need the complete satellite constellation to be up there to start making money. We can make money from the first satellite itself. Only thing which will change with the constellation is that revisit and coverage will only improve. So, our take is that right now to survey the waters, compared to, launching helicopters or speedboats, satellite is the most optimized way. And this revenue can be displaced right from the first satellite itself.
I mean, it's a different kind of risk profile. Not every investor will sort of look at it and say, we will make money. It's also, VC is all about power law, but in space, it's even more of a power law. You'll only have very few bumper returns. Most companies will sort of not make it to that venture scale businesses. Sadly, it's the kind of business there is. Even SpaceX needed $300 million to even get their first rocket up successfully, and then they got $1 billion contract from NASA, and then it took off, right? The origins of venture capital itself were in the Silicon Valley when chips were being built, when it required tens of millions, which is like equivalent to hundreds of millions today. That's kind of the risk profile here. So it takes 4 or 5 years sometimes to actually get to the point where the technology risk is zero, and then you can start commercializing it. But the returns are also much quicker. We are not, it's not like a hockey, stick shape where you need to gradually increase revenue like in software companies. It's almost zero until you put something up there, and suddenly sort of skyrockets once you have that. So when people can get comfortable with it and know that you have to, back winners and there will only be a few, I think it's different, but it works.
Guys, clearly time is up, but before we leave and wrap up this conversation, one quick word on by when we can see India's first space tech unicorn? Do some crystal ball gazing for us, and in one word, if the three of you all, predict something for us.
And make your case for, if you can make your case for being.
Make my case. Okay. So I would say we will see that in like next 1 year or so, because we're already growing.
So
and
by next Moneycontrol Startup Conclave, we will hopefully have a space tech unicorn.
Yes.
What about you, Gaurav?
I think it'll be 3 to 5 years.
Why? I know time's up, but why?
I mean, as we were discussing, it has some gestation period. For unicorn, usually you need sort of 100 million revenue ARR. So my prediction is it would be next 3 to 5 years. We'll see one of the 3 companies here make it up there.
Awais, you have a median figure between 5 and 1.
I think so. I think 2026. Not the money, not the startup conclave next year, but the one after that, and hopefully we will be there as well, given where we are with revenues coming in as well. So let's see.
All right. Thank you so much then. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. Thanks, Aihik. Great co-hosting the panel with you.